Still, it's in the infancy stage. But the AI, machine learning, TensorFlow, all this stuff is really becomes regular, manual computing process in my book. But there is advanced areas which definitely is going to be evolving into the AI space. That when you map into that advanced stuff, exactly quantum computing, basically with respect to mapping into cognitive artificial intelligence, the neurons level, then it maps to exactly brain mapping to stuff, and you can analysis and also some of the aspects much more faster than the order of magnitude faster in terms of the decision making side, and also gives you more accurate. That's the important aspect.
The Popular Science article, what's the date, October something?
This date?
Yeah, I can't make out from October.
Okay.
October
2013.
2010, 2013.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
2017?
No, it's basically that 2017. Yeah, 2017.
Thank you so much.
So in terms of getting into the next level, this one? Okay. So if you talk about quantum cryptography, what is theory versus practical scenarios? Basically that definitely Swiss government has put a lot of money for the last 10 years in the quantum cryptography area. There are a few other countries. There are 7 countries have been put a lot of investments in terms of getting through. But getting into the reality of the stuff, because they have necessity. The necessity makes, basically that, any demand makes it really, they need to innovate something in the field, because they deal with a lot of the money in the bank's financial sector for whole worldwide basis. So you can keep your money there and it will be safe. So it ensures that process point of view, cryptography has been, as one of the mechanism has been taken. Cryptography is nothing new. It's basically 1920 technology, and basically that has been evolving into various phases. Here, what I have been really trying to share with you is that quantum random number generation, which is one of the areas which has been used in the industry for a long time. Similarly, quantum established key distribution process. These are one of the areas which is really coming up, evolving area. Now in this case, today, you need, in order to compute this level of cryptography algorithms, when we talk about all the areas, what you have today crypto is about 128-bit algorithm, and you have 256 for that, particularly only US can use up to 256 or even certain other levels, but all the whole worldwide basis today is 128-bit keys, just key distribution for security purpose. Now that has been evolving. So I will also share with you one of the couple of examples as we proceed further. So today we have at the network level, when we talk about photons, all the optical networks uses basically that you talk about optical carriers, OC48, OC192, that means number of carriers in the optical domain can carry several petabytes of data within one single fiber. In the photon level, the photon can carry that amount of data. So that's where essentially it is coming from. If you take that, in Beijing, Shanghai, the network, they were trying to really apply a similar key distribution between the cities for their data security purpose. Basically authentication. If you want to call, it's more elegant, more authentication process. Swiss quantum network, similarly Tokyo QQD network. But some of the networks which have been in Columbus, Ohio, in different places, these are the network level applications, optical networks where photons are carried through, and they have mechanisms which have been employed, which is also cryptography related algorithms in a simplistic view. And now you have evolved some of these areas. A lot of the theory is there. Significant amount of theoretical research. All the academic institutions like federally funded, NRC, NSERC, all these programs have been spent quite a bit of time. So now they are trying to really bring into smaller scale, practicalizing, like put a server, like provide some level of cryptography, quantum cryptography algorithm that will ensure the data at rest, the data in transit, the data in motion. There is certain type of behaviors which we really take into consideration. So, but these are the stuff which is in the evolutionary phase. That's what I just want to really clarify to the team.
It's hard to read that bottom text.
Okay, the bottom is basically that there are specifically the type of devices, experimental devices, which they are trying to really just build, but it is not going to be very.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, it is you will get the files. So don't worry about it, sir. You get it.
Just remember, there are experimental upgrades or improvements.
Yeah. These are different types of evolution is happening in terms of the conceptualization perspective.
And these are those bottom images are just one of those
The sources where I reference some of the sources are given. Now let's take an example of that in terms of when we talk about security or encryption, how secure encryption is. Okay, so encryption was good in the early 2060s, 90s, 2000s. Encryption was a good mechanism in terms of supporting the security process. Today, we have some of the areas encryption. We can break any type of key, which we don't need much amount of time, because that is the sophistication of the technology which is evolving parallelly, utilizing artificial intelligence. You name it, any techniques which people are utilizing. Like example, in Las Vegas, one of the casinos, they lost almost about close to $120 million within one night. So the question is, under normal circumstances, the regular pattern of the data, if you really take into account, they will never lose no more than 15, 20 million per night. So how can it be 120 million per night losing? That means the guy who is really doing here, playing, has complete and background information. Somebody is running through all the different combinations. He only feeds that number. So in this case, he's going to win irrespective of that. So in this case, today, even the chances of, it's all nothing but probability of winning or losing. It's game theory. So in this game theory, if you apply certain type of techniques, virtually you will see that what are the winning scenarios, what are the losing propositions. So you can apply that. That's what this, some of the lotteries, some of this game stuff. That's one of the reasons. Nowadays, even the casinos, they are employing, very trained specialists, so that see that like how the cyber crime is increasing, how they can reduce, because they don't need anything. They need just a cell phone. So you can throw the cell phone, you can even connect with respect to their machines. You can make certain changes into the game equation. So those are the things which are coming through. Now if you take encryption, this encryption, here how many people are worked in the encryption area? Just raise their hands. Okay, so at least we have some experts here to see that. So if you take these two numbers, basically that this encryption in this side is pretty much straightforward encryption. It's not really that complex encryption, but really when we make into the paradigm, basically that in terms of code breaking, so the combination of these two with the different multiplication side, so the code breaking has been really difficult because it needs a lot of, basically that 16th order or 64th order polynomials to crack that key. So now this is for the like AES 128, AES 256-bit algorithms, or AES 512, 1020 algorithms. So Japan has a very special provision that they are allowed to use in 198-bit. Okay, so every country has all standard stuff, plus each country has different aspect of it. So in this case, what I was trying to really bring down to you, encrypting is easy. When I'm able to decrypt on the other side, I'm taking that. So that's what we are believing, that the process is secure. So today the attack angles, previously they used to only attack in one angle of approach, network where the data side. So today I can, basically in a 360-degree spectrum, I can attack in multiple ways of the same data. So in those type of scenarios, the encryption is easy to crack. That's the point which I just want to bring it to your attention. Now, if you go into the process of, in terms of quantum security, a real challenge, basically that if encryption, as we discussed, is easy, and the code breaking is also becomes, in the quantum computing point of view, is much easier, because you have reduced the complexity in terms of because you are providing more quantum power. That means the computational power, and you also can be able to solve applying certain type of algorithms, like 16th order polynomial versus 64th order polynomial, you can crack within few seconds. So as a result, the code breaking is also becoming much easier. So this is what really the problem which we are seeing in the quantum paradigm shift when we really talk about. So now in terms of what will be affected due to security change. So first of all, we are in the cloud world. Okay, everything you put in the cloud, we are safe. Everything you pay through payment gateways, through cloud is secure. All our stock exchanges, data is in cloud. So everything are looking at the cloud is safe. So today, just I'll give you one survey, almost about 70% of the top executives of the companies throughout the worldwide basis, they are extremely nervous about cloud scenarios, because security is a myth still. Like just an example of it is that we have an apartment building. You have 100 apartments. So it's nothing but it's a shared concept. So in this case, anybody can really break the walls are not that really strong. It's basically the isolation between one enterprise data to another enterprise data. There are some challenges which nobody really go into the details, because that's why Amazons of the world, Googles of the world, or Azures of the world say, well, it is the person who is renting or just basically that want to put his data into the cloud. That is his own responsibility. Okay, you have to ensure your own security stuff. So that is one of the areas. Now you take into account secure web browsing and all this stuff. What we have today in terms of the TLS, SSL, all the securities, these are also evolving quite a bit in terms of really some of the areas. It is good today, but 10 years down the line, it is not good, because that's really with quantum computing, these mechanisms will not fly. there are some limitations. That's what the point I want to really deliver. Today we have all the RSA, different security algorithms. All these algorithms are designed based on 16-bit processing capability, 32-bit processors. That's where it evolved for the last 20 years. Now today we have 64-bit processors. Now when you talk about quantum computing, at least people are expecting 1028-bit level of processing. That means, can you imagine 64-bit, all your laptops, desktops, servers are 64-bit processing capabilities, which evolve into 1028 processing. That is an order of almost about 15x times. So you can see that amount of in that scenario, these algorithms, we do have some limitations.
But the only saving ratio is that they are not easy to be for these components.
Yeah.
But it's like still not reach a common man to have those.
Yes, that's right. That's correct. That's right. But hackers, basically, some other countries also fund for the programs to do this ones.
Yeah, it's a mouse, not a clicker. So you have to keep it.
So,
it's a mouse, not a clicker. So you have to keep it down in this. It just uses a mouse.
From ruler setting, difficult to read.
There you go. Or you can just use the arrow keys.
Ruler setting.
no, it's not. Okay, it's not doing that up.
Just slow down. And then on the right hand side is the slow bar.
Okay, so what are the applications, basically that will affect for if you move into the quantum computing point of view? It's virtually, you see that all the services, whatever we are using, the transport, cell phones, banks, any type of virtually airlines, all the, every vertical you take into account, virtually that will have a significant impact with respect to, without security, you cannot perform these operations. So how are we going to handle the situation? This is really a challenging scenario which we really have to address this process for the quantum computing perspective. So do we need to worry about the security now or later? Okay. So the question is, when I'm sending a data, the data left my machine, so up to that I assure that it is secure. When it is left my system, it went through the internet, the data has to one of you. So in this case, during the transit, anything can happen. So in this case, the data at rest, we are secure. Data in transit, we are not secure today. So that is a problematic issue. So in this case, when we are talking about, basically quantum computing and amount of data which you are going to be handling is fairly significant. In this case, basically that how long this cryptographic keys need to be secure. Is it like 1 minute or 30 seconds? After that, you don't need really. These are some of the challenges one has to face with respect to this process. And also basically that existing tools, whatever we have the security tools today, how we can be able to reposition and also redesign for ultra-scale quantum safe security applications. How long it will take? Because this nobody really can give exact answers. So in terms of the migration time, for very significant.
Just one relevant comment. I'm not sure how many of you have recently done your refines of your homework. But I'm sure you got that.
We're running behind on time.
Yeah.
When we do that, not actually make you sign that disclaimer.
That's
And you do make a payment of money and whatever to be lost in transit. So you
That's
try to make a check, not that you're contracts.
yeah, that's right.
That's because I'm not sure about these.
That's so in this case, summary of this point is to summarize for your benefit is that basically whatever we have in the quantum computing area, basically that is it scalable, is it can be able to leverage the existing security mechanisms, or we have to reinvent the complete security. This is where exactly it's a challenge this has been going through, even for the various departments of government also struggling through this process. But definitely there is a significant amount of changes and we'll come through into the security realm that will give an answer to this process. Now let me just take one example. I walk through it completely. Let's take two people. Just we use in the security point of view, like Bob and Alice, just as an example that used commonly in the industry. But in the optical networks, in the quantum photon point of view, when I send a photon from point A to point B, the photon is carrying the data. So in this case, I have multiplexers, lasers, devices, and all this stuff. So in this case, I'm just setting up the eavesdropping scenario. So in this case, particularly the Alice is sending the data, Bob is going to receive the data. Now, eavesdropping is happening at various stages, basically at the mixer level, optical mixing level, where I can detect the photon's movement. I can be able to really alter the photon energy. I can control based on the detection scheme and also the laser frequency. So this is one of the areas which is just basically to give an idea. So in terms of various steps which I'm just going to go through. So the second step is basically that if you take the threshold of energy, basically that the time window and the voltage levels, the energy, which is basically transferring with respect to the mixture, where I will be able to, the detector will be able to detect the signal, optical signal, the photon signal, and able to map it to that one, and clearly map it, overlap with another signal, So in this case, I'm able to get the data. I am also going to really introduce a state called false state. The data false, and that means I can corrupt the data at that energy levels. When I change energy level in the photons, yes, your data will be changed. So this is one of the fundamental difference shift comes into the picture. So that's in this case, eavesdrop can be measured using the photonic equipment today in the lab setup. I can demonstrate. I have a project, I'm just really not going to go through the details, but definitely we will be able to demonstrate in the practical lab environment. Okay, then you have another stuff is basically that let's really look at other aspect. So when we really look at the experimental setup point of view, like take just optical fiber, put for 100 kilometers a strand, connect with the two people in between, so this strand. So in between, if I can really make a crack on the optical fiber and connect with a multiplexer, and I'm able to really see that measure exactly the same conversations, whatever is the data is going through. So that means we do have, basically that with respect to telecom segment, we can really measure this type of stuff today, practically viable in a photons carrying this at the optical level. Clearly OC192 type of optical throughputs, that means you have several terabytes of data or petabytes of data carrying through in a single strand of fiber. So that's a huge amount of data. So plus if that data I'm able to really do the eavesdrop setup, that means I can really definitely from a security point of view, we have a challenge to address here. So the next aspect of it is I'm just going to go through. So in the quantum security experimental work point of view, we have different type of lasers. We have different frequencies they will operate, 850 nanometers, 1300 nanometers, 1300, 1550 nanometers, these are. But each one will carry through certain amount of photons, which a high amount of data bandwidth. These are all related to exactly amount of bandwidth which we carry through in the fiber. Any changes of the energy level, the power levels, which is at the laser side, and basically the physical parameters, and basically that we can really be able to measure the eavesdropping as an example of the security measure. Now you get into the next level. So basically that you have the optical, different optical equipments today, whatever we have in terms of Mark Chandler's, interferometer. There are several optical equipments which can be used, those optical equipments, to measure at each stage of the basically that here what we have is if a phase change, amplitude change, the energy level change, those three factors which really impacts, I can really change the behavior of the basically that in terms of your data which is passing through. So in this case, there are certain experimental work, it can be demonstratable in the lab environment today. So if you take the basically that I have further went through that process, basically that you take the different signals, basically the energy levels of this one, 0, 1, you take it in this example. I am able to really create the eavesdropping sessions between the signals, the data points, which the bits which you are moving in the quantum computing perspective. Now in this case, basically that the D0 and D1 with the different states, different equipment, optical equipment today at the quantum level, photons, energy level, we can measure certain things. Okay, basically that this eavesdrop is successful, and we create false states, and we also measure that the data what is going through in the false state as well. So in this case, at least from a security point of view, the data integrity, yes, we can break the data integrity in quantum level. That's what the message which I'm just trying to deliver. So now if you take that quantum key distribution, QKD. So basically in this case, there are three fundamental principles which is behind this one. Number one is basically that, as I said, in terms of the quantum key distribution mechanisms, which whatever we have, the traditional mechanisms will not be sufficient. So the QKAD, the quantum key distribution mechanisms have to be new, it has to be adaptable for the quantum application, the amount of data which we are going to be looking at. The second aspect also, we are looking at some of the protocols which needs to be integrated in order to support. So in this case, you have different sets of protocols which we can apply. Like, you have dispersion based, non-dispersion based, and also the protocols, there are few type of very specific protocols for disperse. For example, in terms of the intensity of the photon, and also the basis modulation of the photon, and the altitude, basically attenuation controls of the photon can completely change the characteristics of the data which I am carrying through. So that's where we use the Mark-Zandler interferometer to do the measurements of a particular scenarios, and here it's one of the examples which we have given. Now similarly, I have a couple of other acts. If you take the experimental quantum security point of view, basically that there are two things are going through. So I think so in this case, basically that we have the top three levels of the diagram, where basically we use the DPSK. This is one of the protocols which is used in the optical networking side, DPSK protocol. So in this case, all the top three waveforms will provide the, in terms of the light, the photon, how you can change the normal operation of the data side. And you also can create fake states. They will correspond to the same as the information exchange of the data side. These are the two contribution areas which really you can really address the process side. There is a So if you take the quantum safe cryptography tool sets point of view, okay, here I'm just bringing two of the aspects. One is basically that MIT, they have a set of tools they have developed, and there are a couple of optical labs within US. They also have developed some of the quantum related tool sets which they are trying to apply for the areas. So in addition to that, the DoD has a specific, there are about several programs which we do. I'm heavily intensely involved with a lot of the government side of the work. So as a result, I see that this quantum cryptography is the area which is definitely is getting into more attention day by day. But as we progress today, we are still some of the algorithms research, in terms of the quantum resistant algorithms point of view. There's a set of about 25 algorithms in this area have been identified. And those algorithms, very specific focus, how to we will be able to provide. So either of the approaches, if you take the tool sets, whatever we have working today very well, can be leveraged that data to design, to innovate the new tools for the cryptography. That's what essentially is going to be moving forward. But definitely the random number sequencing approach will not really stay for the purposes of the, in terms of quantum key distribution approach mechanism for the cryptography. That is going to change. So in terms of the network level, we know trusted networks, untrusted networks, that is clearly you have an embedded, even if you take today Intel, some of the Xeon servers, you have trusted computing module embedded into that, and you have trusted zone. So that way in that area, all the way from BIOS to the microprocessor, you have, because of the trusted zone, it really be able to ensure that whatever the data you are sending is secure. But still, once it goes out of the machine, then you have untrusted zone. So the untrusted zone is the one which people are trying to really look at, a lot of the areas of the aspects. Now, if you take into account quantum security standardization point of view, so for any technology, if you want to really put into the public use, there has to be some standards establishment. So in the same way, if you take in the telecom industry, all the optical network equipment, all the new technologies, there have been standards, ITU standards. Similarly, here, because I am talking about the security, that's where NIST will come into picture. And even for some of the other organizations, other countries, bodies or the regulatory bodies will come into picture for each of the countries. At that level, the NIST will define some of this stuff, in terms of going through. So until last year, NIST was not really that involved into this process. So if you can see that, when it is going to be a standard for quantum security, it's going to take some more time into this process. At least, fairly another 4 or 5 years. I don't see really coming out that fast, but definitely there will be de facto standard. Somebody will establish, they will force that standard to use it, and then that standard will be given to NIST, and trying to see that that is another path of approach where to get into this process. Now, if you take into account basically that in terms of ongoing work to support a lot of the other organizations' point of view, here both the US side and also European side. So in terms of both the computer security divisions, basically that in terms of both the NIST and all the DoD organizations, all the standardization organizations. Similarly, in the Europe side, ETS side, the European Technology Standards Institution, that they also have been really working through quantum security aspects. Some of the stuff have been initiated, but it is going to go through this whole equation. It's going to take several years before they become a standards. So what is the vision? You see the long-term vision. Everybody will be looking at, okay, this quantum computing is going to change the next big revolutionary step of the technology space. Yes, definitely quantum bits, distribution and moving through the systems, either it's the satellites, aircrafts, vehicles, ships, handheld devices. So that means we don't need any desktops, any more laptops, any servers. Everything will become, this is going to be the quantum device. So if this device can take over all the functionality, that means it will have a significant amount. Already you have 10 gig, 20 gig or 100 gig capacity coming into the stuff. Now if it's a terabyte, 2 terabytes of data coming through this device, this itself sets a new paradigm shift. So you don't need servers, you don't need all that stuff. So that's what really essentially what I'm trying to really bring to the account. So quantum security, basically implementation for each of this area is the key area, which really is the important area before the quantum computing takes off. Because within the quantum computing, you take the photon level at the system level, hardware level, semiconductor manufacturing level, what do they need to protect? Then at the application level, what algorithms has to be protected? Those are the things which are going to be evolving and coming to the space. Now in this particular scenario, every applications, you take the transportation, all the ATM machines, all the cell phones, all the existing devices, you see how it is consolidating. There is a significant amount of consolidation comes through with respect to quantum computing. So it may take for a fairly significant amount of time before it becomes the reality of this vision. So what are the implementation challenges which we see? And I have been only just have used 2 examples of the experimental data. I have a couple of projects which we are trying to really work through, but still it is a government funded projects, but it needs to go through the next phases. Here, the quantum computing will be evolving field. Basically that it will go through at least the next decade of significant R&D, research and development side. And also there is a lot of computing applications, services, the growth demands on the security. Security is a vital element in this case, not just because I work in security field, that's not the important aspect. Because you need to have secure communication, whatever the platform, whatever the application you deal with respect to. So quantum security is new field. It requires a lot of validation and standards compliance. That is another aspect of it which really goes through. In terms of high amount of investment is required in this field to accelerate the innovation. So far everybody, if you really look at semiconductor field, last 5 years, not many semiconductor companies came up. Okay, they don't want to invest in the hardware. So everybody would love to invest in software so that they can really benefit. Without really platform in the quantum computing, how can really this innovation will take off? That's really a question to all of us. Now, quantum computing resources and also the training support, because you need a specialized for this one. Normally, not regular people can handle this type of technologies. So that's one of the areas which definitely a shortage for the virtually worldwide basis. So quantum security recommendations point of still the research, quantum research is in the university conceptual phase. Some level of R&D is happening, and practical quantum computing need to start from semiconductors with integrated microservices. Whatever today we call in the cloud computing is just a small element in the quantum computing stuff. Okay, so you don't need really data center. I can really have my own data center just utilizing it quantum computing concepts. So that's the further evolutionary step. So in this case, all the integrated microservices and applications will evolve. Every home will become its own. They will have their own cloud. They will have their own applications. They will really independently can operate. That is the level of the quantum computing will bring that level of vision and the future for the people, for the country. So in terms of quantum security is a major R&D effort which is basically required, and people, whoever is interested, if somebody wants to really work in this field, they can contact me. I will definitely enable, but I cannot promise I will be able to support everybody. There's some level of experimental work, there's some level of developmental aspects, certain things, but again, it's basically that I have a couple of projects I floated, and basically that I'm working with a couple of organizations to see how far we will be able to make a dent. And again, this is a humble beginning, and I don't think really we are at that stage at this. It will take at least another decade. Okay, thank you so much for the time, and I really appreciated all the team members. If you have any questions, I'll be delighted to address.
We need to move quickly, so any quick questions from the audience?
So,
yeah,
I'll give chance for this, but I have
yeah.
two comments.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
Yes,
please.
Dr. Vessel.
I know that Los Alamos were running some tests for the quantum key distribution in a few other places, and basically they finished their trial period.
I think the team on the side is waiting.
Click on the 30 seconds.
Kind of
I will show you that.
Okay.
trials.
These trials are going to go for 6 months to 1 year. And once the data integrated, they are going to take this data to one of the organizations in DC, and they are going to further sanitize this stuff. And there is a Lincoln Labs in attachment with respect to MIT, and they are also doing some work. They have funded project. Today they have almost about $15 million funded project on the cybersecurity side for the photon level, what they need to do. So, and also you have probably that there are 3 more universities. I'm involved with a couple of them. They're also going to be getting through some funding aspect through both in our insert and also with respect to a couple of other agencies are looking at funding for this purposes. So it's at least I see that once this certification, at least this validations goes through, at least it will become as a draft standard, at least to start with working in this field. That's my first concern. Is that okay?
Okay.
Any
He
other-
wants to do something quickly.
Any other questions?
I'll just take 30 seconds.
So just, Virendra has another moment to lighten things up a little bit. We've had a lot of serious, highly intellectual presentations. Thank you again to Dr. Venkat for an outstanding presentation.
A big hand for Dr. Venkat.
So Virendra will have a quick word and then we'll move on to the next presentation, Deep Prasad.
Just 30 seconds. And Dr. Venkat has been talking about Alice and Bob and that example. This is the most simplistic explanation of that example. That Alice and Bob were in love and tried to keep their entanglement secret from Alice, evil mother Eve. But Eve found out and revealed the state of affair. Alice totally collapsed, and so did Bob. That's the state of quantum. That's exactly where it is. And this is very nicely depicted in another small cartoon here. Exact Bob and Alice situation. That's all I wanted to share. We'll be sharing that with you. Thank you, Dr. Venkat, once again. It was a very enlightening presentation.
So we've had some great presentations today. The quality has been very good. In the morning with Dr. Veslin and